welcome to our panel. Well, we'll get into the topic of sustainability and design, but we all know this is an issue that goes much deeper than a trend. My name is Tamara Warren. I am the founder of Lacar, and I will be your moderator today. And I'm so thrilled to introduce to you this incredible panel we have. Starting on my left is Marina Testino. She is an artivist. She is a creative director and a co-founder of her own brand. Next, we have Pierre Paslier, co-founder of Not Pla. Eric Chen, the curator and director of Design Miami, our host today. And finally, last but not least, we have Rock, the founder of Azalek Tulum here. And so without further ado, I'm going to kick it off. This is a very casual conversation. But I think what's most interesting about this group of people is how dialogue between very different fields can be used to access problem solving and solutions to move forward on this very vast kind of abstract concept to form concrete solutions. And I think each of them exemplifies in their work and their practice solutions that are in line with this way of thinking. So I will start by addressing the question with Marina to tell us a bit about her work, which is campaign-driven. And it's one aspect of her work, and really how we can use the idea of culture and media and bringing people together. So if you want to start by telling us about some of your recent projects and how you've begun to weave in your beliefs and practice and values on sustainability.
Yeah, hello. So I create campaigns to raise awareness around sustainability in the fashion industry. And I feel nowadays everyone's stressed out with the word sustainability. Like, it means so much. We keep hearing messages of you need to do this, you need to do that. And someone feels overwhelmed and they're like, okay, I'm not going to do anything because if I do a bit, I'll be criticized because I'm not doing enough. So I create these campaigns using art to make it a fun way of how can we be more sustainable and how we can do easy steps and baby steps to do this. So my first campaign was called One Dress to Impress. And I wore a red suit every day for 2 months. And it was to raise awareness around fast fashion and this idea that social media is pressuring us to wear something different, to post a different picture, to always be seen with different clothes. And why? Why do we need to show people that we're changing all the time? It's polluting, it's stressful, it's not healthy, and it costs a lot of money. So it's really creating campaigns to showcase, mainly in the fashion industry, to showcase how we can be more sustainable and how easy it can be. So this was like the red suit was one campaign, which was One Dress to Impress. And then I created another campaign called Yellow Like a Lemon. And I wore yellow outfits for 2 months, and everything was rented pieces, sustainable brands, secondary market, and borrowed pieces. And it was really showing how, and I started this during Paris Fashion Week. So I attended Paris Fashion Week, all in yellow, every day a different outfit, but all the outfits were sustainable. So it's really showing how if you want to be in the fashion industry, you can still change every day, but how can you do this while being sustainable? Where can you buy secondary market? What is a sustainable brand? What are sustainable brands? Where I can rent pieces. So it's really, I do these projects to showcase the alternatives, how easy it is to be sustainable, how we can change daily habits to be more sustainable. And then my last campaign was called We See Through. So I don't know if you guys know about microplastics, but it's a huge problem. Not a lot of people know about it. And the fashion industry contributes to 30% of microplastics in the ocean nowadays. So 60% of our clothing is synthetic and made out of plastic. And every time we wear it, it sheds plastic. So I created, and I wasn't aware of that. And I started asking people in the industry, like, did you know that synthetic clothing sheds plastic? Stylists, makeup artists, editors, no one knew. So it's really something that's affecting everyone because we're ingesting fish, we're eating the fish, we're killing the animals. And I did a campaign to raise awareness around this by going naked for a month. You can't see anything. But basically, it's really rethinking what we own, how we shop, what we're buying, and realizing that we have so much plastic in our life that is unnecessary, and we use so much single-use plastic that we don't need. So that's like kind of a bit of the campaigns.
Amazing. Thank you, Marina. It seems like a perfect point to talk also about, just yesterday a report released that 2019 is the worst, the worst year of highest emissions on record ever, by scientists, as reported in the New York Times. And plastic is such a big part of waste, and that's a perfect segue into Pierre's work with his company Natpla. And Pierre, obviously, you're coming at a material problem, but from a very different field, thinking about design and food and consumption in a different way with the C's. So I'd love if you could just share some of your work and where you're at in your product development, which some of us got to sample yesterday. Really fascinating.
Hi everyone. So just for putting things in context, I'm going to demo what we do. But we've created this. We call it OHO, and it's essentially edible packaging. This one contains some flavored water, and the idea is that we can replace instant consumption that usually requires some single-use plastic, but something that is completely natural, completely biodegradable, and even edible. So cheers. So I'm just making the waste disappear. Here we go, no waste. And so we basically created this packaging solution 5 years ago out of Royal College of Art and Imperial College, where I met my co-founder, with the aim of finding an alternative to single-use plastic, with the angle of thinking, what would nature do? Like, how would nature package this? And we were really trying to create a man-made fruit, something that would feel like nature could easily produce and get rid of and recycle. And so after a lot of experimentation with lots of materials, we ended up finding the amazing properties of seaweed. So the actual material is made from a seaweed extract. And it's not only very easy for nature to recycle it, but seaweed has some amazing credentials in terms of like sustainability. So it grows up to 1 meter per day. So it's one of the fastest growing organisms. So extremely renewable. It doesn't use food crops. It's actually a huge sink of like CO2. And so it has a big, we find a way to use it in packaging. And so we've developed this solution for not replacing every single type of like plastic bottle or cups, but really focusing on instant consumption. And some of the most exciting events we've participated in recently are the London Marathon. So we do a lot of races. All of the runners are just grabbing this instead of a plastic cup or a bottle. We have some for you to try at the Lexus booth. So after the talk, you can experience that for yourself. And we do a lot of like sampling and activations. And we find that actually such a large portion of the plastic we use is consumed within a few minutes, that it doesn't make sense to use something as indestructible as plastic. So if we can match the shelf life of the product with the shelf life of the packaging, we have something that makes so much more sense. And I think that in the past, designers were not necessarily kind of like putting too much attention on the end of life of the materials that they would use for packaging, for any kind of object, or even in the art field. I think that there is a lot of disregard for what happens at the end of the project. And I think that it's exciting to see that designers now have this role of making sure that what they create will be all right for nature at the end of the use. And I think that it's quite exciting to see that amongst the exhibitors, there's a growing kind of like concern for these kind of problems. And I think that this will go a long way because as a like as a role, designers, they kind of like showcase what could be done differently, and they're like giving permission to the rest of the general public to explore different areas. So I think that it's really exciting to see this shift in this industry.
Thank you. Eric, shifting the lens a bit, thinking about from an audience-driven perspective, how do you tackle the topic of making people think about materials or not think about materials? What kind of choices do you make when you're bringing together, large bodies of work from very disparate perspectives and designers in the fair and in the context of presentation? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, sure. No, again, I'm a curator, so I can't claim to be, at the front lines like these guys doing the fantastic projects that they are. I think my role is more, on the one hand as a supporter of what you do, but and maybe as a bit of a provocateur, let's say. Now, with Design Miami, when I started my role as curatorial director this year, it was clear that we wanted to, sort of set more coherent agendas for the fair in order to sort of rally people around ideas and contribute to the discussions going on around design. And of course, sustainability is one that cannot and should not be avoided. But through the lens of design, we decided to look at materials and resources, right? Because this is something that designers have always been experimenting with and continue to. Now, in Basel, we focused on Earth. The theme was Elements Earth. And there we had an exhibition where we showcased designers working in a more conceptual, critical, or speculative realm. So not necessarily designs that are meant to be sat on or used in a utilitarian way, but designs coming out of the kind of let's say the R&D branch of the design world. Works that were not just sort of trying out new materials, but actually rethinking more fundamentally the blurring distinctions between natural and artificial, raw material and waste, production and consumption, in this kind of, to use an overused term, Anthropocene condition that is increasingly gained currency. Now, you mentioned, Tamara, this notion of problem solving, and I think you're absolutely right, and these guys are doing really great things to address and solve some of these issues. But I think in general, in design, we can't and aren't focusing so much on the notion of problem solving the way we used to, because I think we more humbly realize that the problems are too complex to be quote unquote solved, right? So it really is a matter of kind of rethinking, like redefining, and creating cultural shifts that change what we can, but also allow us to that also give us the tools to adapt to what we cannot change, and to kind of remediate and moderate and evolve in ways that reflect the extent to which we're changing the actual nature of nature and the planet itself.
Thank you. Roth, you've been thinking about many of these issues for decades, and I would love for you to share some of the context on how you approach and think about the problems you are actually solving, addressing, redefining in your work. Can you share with us a bit?
Well, I hope I want to share some info that perhaps you already know, but it's important to understand what we are doing. According to the Intergovernmental Panel of United Nations, we have no more time. We have to start acting now. The situation is not reversible, it's perhaps mitigable, and we will spending $3 trillion in retrofitting of cities. If we do in 10 years, and perhaps 7 trillions if we do the retrofitting in 20 years, plus the cost of the grid that will be able to, for the Internet of Things, that will cost another 9 trillions. All this quantity of money only exists in pension funds, and the pension funds are deeply invested in oil and gas. And it's diverting only at 8% to the green energies. Second is that, according to the Pentagon, we will have in 10 years 100 million people displaced, and in 20 years, 500 million people displaced. And the U.S. Army says that they don't have the money, nor have the structure to do anything about it. So this is our problem. And of course, these people will have leaders, and they will act. Another part of the world, in Amazonia, I lived a year with the Amazonian people. When an Amazonian man went to marry, he invited his friends and to make his house. He made it in a day, 20 people. By the night, he made a dinner to share with them and say thank you for the help. And at the same time is a wedding party. And so the next day, he's already living in marriage. We spent 4 months planning the wedding, another 4 months paying for the wedding, and 10 years paying the house. So perhaps there could be an interesting point of view to keep form for the business model. In Mexico, we have building over 30 acres, a city of arts, without cutting a single tree. In my home, I have 200 trees living inside the home. And perhaps I should say that they are not living, I don't bring the trees. I go in the forest and I found my place around the trees with my belongings and I live with them. And this is an amazing experience because normally the trees go through the roof and they make the chlorophyll outside because my house is a cave, as the cave everybody lives on and it's dark. So there is not possible to make chlorophyll, and the nature is very practical. So they don't do things that are not practical, but they are producing branches and leaves inside the home. Why? It's because the nature is collaborative. And so collaboration is very important in the process to reconnect with the nature and to face the problems. In Amazonia, we're now planning to make an hotel hanging for the trees, 120 feet high on the trees. So we can use concrete. We have to use new materials to do that. We are also planning to do a floating hotel in Amazonia, and we're planning to do a floating hotel in the sea that will be part leisure, part scientific investigation for families to integrate everybody in the project. So this is what we're going to do.
I think that there's a common thread in what you all expressed an interest in, and I think there's also an interesting dichotomy between preservation of nature and then tools which are technological in nature used to solve these problems that can have the effect of sometimes creating new problems, right? So how do you navigate the choices you make in the processes you engage in the ways you navigate such a rapidly changing way of thinking that draws from both the past and the unknown, the future?
Well, I think the topic sustainability is always changing. There's always new place for new technologies, new place for new things to come out. So we need to continuously keep evolving, keep researching, keep reading, and keep getting informed. Because maybe what we have today in 10 years is completely different. So I think, like, in general, companies and business models need to continuously be open to change and really to morph to what's new and what's better. And how kind of I put it in my campaigns is really looking to see what are small problems that maybe we're not aware of, and how I can bring awareness to these things, that if we can if everyone can do a baby step and put it in their daily life, we can actually do a difference.
I agree with you. I think that one thing that's really interesting and probably relates to some of some of your experiences that now this is a public debate and like people are very participative in that discussion. And I think that in a way now for a lot of people the problems related with pollution, climate change, they've hit home. There's a lot of emotional connection with this. So the more people we get in that discussion, the more we have the general public being kind of like taking everyone accountable for what choices we make, what alternatives are available, the better, because people are actually really good at dissecting anything that you put on the market now, like with the power of social media and the power of like people almost demanding what they want from brands. We're seeing a big shift in power, and I think that this is something that is giving me hope, because even if we still have a lot of like alternatives, and as you said, maybe sometimes you have one thing that has some consequences and another one that has other consequences, it's hard to choose. But if you have the transparency to let people kind of like choose, and we empower more this kind of like responsibility onto the general public, will hopefully make choices that correspond to what everybody wants, which is a future with clean air and clean water and like no health issues. And I think those are simple demands for the future.
If I can agree with what you both said, but also maybe go a little bit more extreme with it. I think we are increasingly aware that, of course, we all have to do our part, so the sort of best that we can. But we're also we're also sort of almost unavoidably complicit in a system that is basically self-destructing, and that much deeper, more profound, fundamental, systemic and structural changes need to happen. I mean, you know, nowadays you have legitimate, credible people saying that capitalism itself is not sustainable. I mean, just a few years ago, that would have been considered really fringe and radical, but I think we're all kind of coming around. Now, you had mentioned this bad news in the New York Times last night, which I saw also. There was a little bit of good news in the New York Times over the summer when, I guess, the CEOs of over 200 big American companies, I think JP Morgan Chase and yada yada, had issued a joint statement saying that shareholder value should not be the only thing that drives them. Now, this is a very nice statement of intention, and the proof is in the pudding, and let's see where it goes. But the fact that this was even happening is, I think, a sign that we are aware that bigger changes need to come. Now, how those changes come is the question. Does it happen in a managed way, or does it happen in a catastrophic way? And I think that is what that's the choice that we're confronted with.
Well,
Yeah.
on the economic, the demographic, the new materials, the new solution, technological solutions, there are 4 elements that is the most important from my point of view, and it's about nature. And I will give you an example in how I live in a year with the Amazonian people. They normally sleep all together over one roof, as we used to do until some generation that we start living in isolated caves, everyone. And for example, after the ayahuasca ceremony, that by the way I highly recommend to everybody to take, everybody sleeping together, and sometimes somebody wake up because have a bad dream, so he moved the other one, who is the neighbor, wake up too, and they start sharing the dream. Another person over there is half awake, and animal who is hunting around make noises, another animal who was the prey make a horrible sound, and the dog bark, and the bird sing, and all this is building by symbiosis the dream, the collective dream. So in this dream participate the humans and the non-humans, the animals, the plants, the dead, the alive, even the people in transition from human to animals, the shamans, and everything is building the symbiosis that is build everything. And when they wake up in the morning, everybody knows what they will do today, this day. If it will be a day for hunting, or it will be a day for fishing, or it will be a day to share with the friends. When they wake up and they go to the jungle and pee, the mycelium of the fungus who connect all the trees and allow one tree to communicate with the other trees and send nutrients to the one to another, read biological the pee and produce the plant that can help the chipibo. But this happened not only for the Indian, it happened for all the animals in the jungle for millions of years. And if we go to the jungle and we pee, a plant will grow for us. And so life is integrated by the symbiosis of all these beings that are building the reality and the world. But we spend 93% of our time in caves. In the cave where we sleep, in the cave where we work, and the cave with wheels. So we are completely isolated. And the only way to reconnect with life is that we start repatriating with the form of the thought of life, for the form of the thought of nature. Because the energy follows the form, and the form determines the function. So if we repattern with this music of thought, the thought of the world, we will be able to receive all the info we need, because nature has living for thousands, millions of years, creating abundance. There is not disease in the jungle or in the desert. Everybody lives in harmony and growing and become more abundant and more sophisticated. And we are in the end of a cave without any relation with life, destroying everything. We go make flat a place, destroying the form that takes millions of years to create, and the energy that's moving this way, creating a special spot with a special energy that the animals recognize and go there to heal and to get power or to grow or everything. We are making everything flat. We cut all the trees, and we build over the cemetery. When we see a forest, we will see good, but the Aboriginal see home, say heal, see family, see meaning, sacredness, he see life, and we only see good. So, well, this will be I am being a little extensive, but it's the preparation for the solution. Okay.
Thank you. You know, when we're here, I think about, this is an amazing place to be away from what so often happens to the idea of design in contemporary times, which is so closely linked to brand. And I think it's incredible to pull back into a place where we can really examine the aesthetic of design and the beauty of design and how design signals ideas in our minds. So my question is, what is the role of designers to lead change? There's a social responsibility, but what are the tools that designers need to tap into to think about the change? And how can the aesthetic of design continue to propel questioning, pushing, challenging notions that are commonly accepted, instead of what has happened in years past, where there's this dichotomy, or there's one school that wants design to look environmental and another school that suggests that design should not signal anything different. And I would actually be more curious about how can design lead that change?
I think design and art are a form of action, are a international language that everyone understands. And if I tell you like, oh, let's watch a documentary on how to become eco, like you'll be like, that's a bore. But if I tell you like, let's go to a museum and suddenly a piece of art is speaking to you about something, you really, like art can really speak to you in a different way that words do. And I feel like as a designer, as an artist, as a creative, using your voice to promote sustainability, to promote how to be more eco-friendly is very powerful. And you have a following that will understand. Like right now we have so much news about the planet crisis. Like we have so much news about things, negative things happening, and if we want, we can listen to it. But the reason we're not listening to it is because we don't want. We're like overwhelmed by so much negativity. So I think using design and art as a medium to translate the issues happening and how we can overcome them and what we can do is a very powerful tool. So.
I think that we are in crisis mode, and as a result, there is this kind of like survival instinct of just like finding ways to get ourselves out of it. And I think that designers have the privilege of being the ones writing the narrative. And I think that, as you were saying, like especially maybe not like as far as like art, but design. And what we see in Design Miami is this R&D. I like this idea of like being the lab for the rest of the world. And so I think that it's very exciting when like designers take up that responsibility of actually exploring a few other ways to do things and try to kind of like take that risk that maybe other people in the rest of like society can't take that level of risk. So yeah, I think that it's a big responsibility, and I think that it's almost like a hygiene factor at the moment. A lot of people are questioning whether it's going to be a trend and then it's going to like get out of the picture, but I think it's just it's got to stay because that's so essential, and I think it's just going to have to be there, some part of the question there all the time.
We don't need to go always down the road, do we? But since we started, no, I mean, again, that's all totally on point, and I loved your use of the word narrative, because that is one thing that designers, that's so important, is changing the narrative, and that's what designers are often really good at. You know, they're good at asking questions and then not providing answers necessarily, but presenting possibilities and scenarios that may at the time seem unimaginable, but that nonetheless lead us in different directions. This is why perhaps the areas of speculative design or design fiction are where a lot of the most interesting work is happening right now in design, because we are in a period not just of crisis, but in which reality is stranger than fiction, right? And in some ways you need to have that ability to kind of hypothesize the once unimaginable in order to be able to find ways of adapting to the changes that will inevitably inevitably be undergoing. Yeah.
And Roth, I would love if you could speak to your vision on how we think about this moving forward.
Well, I think that we will deeply think if we were ready to spend 20 years and all the money available to retrofit cities and retrofit the horrible caves in where we live, or we have another options. I think the mobility is essential because 500 million people, 500 million people will be on move forcefully, and in the equatorial area they will be drought for, it will stop rain for 2-3 years. Actually, in Mexico, the rain season comes 1 month later. There was problem of famine. Imagine with 2 years. So if actually there is a cyber attack over the grid in the state, it will take perhaps could be areas of the state months without energy for calefacción, refrigeration, medicine, food. Imagine. And this problem will be resolved at long 20 years. The grid is very essential, but what about spend all the money in retrofit the houses? What if we start thinking, it's crazy the idea, but imagine thinking about how the Chipibo lives and how fast they can adapt to the situation, and we will have to move. Perhaps if we don't move, we will live with the 500 million people displaced under the one roof, and perhaps we want to get some alternative. Imagine a backpack, technological backpack, that you have a tent, a sophisticated tent. If you are very rich, could be a very big backpack that you can display in different scenarios and have the technology, big screens, energy solutions, everything, and you move in your out drone. In an era that telecommunication, energy, and transportation will tend to zero because of the solar, it will be very factible to live in drones and go and charge the energy across the grid, and perhaps spend time in cities, but spend time moving. Perhaps the 500 people displaced will be where we can focus on trying to help them, because it's our responsibility. Otherwise, they will come here. We have to find a solution for them. So actually, they are using, imagine the Chipibos in 1 day made the home, and they live in the same temperature area in the tropical as the people that will be displaced around the world. So the solution have to be very similar, could be very similar. So to finish, I think that we can't trust in technology that it will keep the solution. Think about Google, think about Facebook, and all the dream everybody had about these companies, and finally they become proprietary, they become used by the power, and the same will happen with the technology we'll develop. And the 500 million people will go and get the house. So that's why I think it's so important that we reconnect with the symbiosis of life, because we are in the bad path and we have no more time. And the earth is becoming inhabitable. We have to learn to live on sea. We have to learn to live in a mobile way. We have to use technology, of course. But the most important thing is that we reconnect. We be part of the symbiosis of the totality. Otherwise, we can't survive. And we have no time. So I invite every one of you and thinking and participate in some way or other to be part of this solution. And get out some part of the day outside, sit in the park, embrace a tree, reconnect with life. See, that is a lot of things happening outside. We're spending 93% of our time in a cave, and life doesn't happen in a cave. Life happens outside and inside. And we should start thinking with the heart, thinking with the left hand, start creating things with the left hand, start becoming part of the thought of life, of nature, of the world.
Okay. All right, I have one last question, and everyone doesn't have to answer, feel free, but I'm wondering if design responds to the needs, the wants, the desires of the people. Are we entering a new era in design that's in response to this global crisis? And could we be in the midst of a new era in design thinking?
Yeah, I think that the transformation that we're going to live through in our lifetime are going to be much greater than what's happened until now. And I think that everything is going to have to change. So to that point, I would totally agree that like there will be a new era where like the roles are different, and therefore we need to adapt to the new kind of like status that we live in. And so again, like designers have the role and the responsibility to write the new narrative, to open the new ways of thinking, to explore the new kind of like questions that will have to be answered. And I think that it's a blank page. And if we approach it that way, and if we try to reconnect with nature, and if we try to do all of this, trying to like to make sense of all these elements, not just focus on one thing, I think we're gonna have some really interesting things that are gonna come out of it.
And if I can sort of build on that and go back to your point about aesthetics earlier, right? Like I think one thing that design can help us do as well is to sort of shift values in the way we see things, but also from an aesthetic point of view. Like Marina, you know, you're sort of doing a lot of work to sort of to enforce this notion that that we don't need to wear, you know, to have such massive closets full of lots of clothes, right? And Pierre, like the Ojo, which is really amazing. And if you guys have a chance, it's at the Lexus booth. Please go try it. I mean, you know, these are things that are not familiar to us, right? But they're not how we're used to drinking water and other beverages. But and it might even look a little strange at first. But through a change of habits and perception, these things can become increasingly normal and accepted. But I'm starting to realize if the solution is actually ayahuasca, Roth. No?
I recommend highly. Take as much ayahuasca as you can. This is my final recommendation.
I would like to open it up to see if anyone has any burning questions. We have just a few minutes left.
This question is for Pierre. Hi, Pierre. With the Ojo product, I know that you designed it in mind to replace plastic, right? But at the rate that we as humans have to consume water on a day-to-day basis, what is the solution? Like, how does the packaging get bigger? Can you accommodate 1 liter, 1.5 liter? Like, how does that even work?
Thanks for the question. I think that in a way, I personally believe that there's not going to be any material that's just going to replace plastic everywhere, because plastic is just too performant and too cheap to actually kind of like find a natural alternative that would do the same things while disappearing quickly and not creating like toxic waste in the environment. So I think that we're going to have to take it a lot more as a case-by-case scenario and find applications where seaweed can answer that problem, mushrooms can answer that problem, and maybe some kind of waste stream from fruits and vegetables can answer that problem. And look at the right material in nature, because every fruit is different, every tree is different. And I think that with that in mind, our solution is very much focused on-the-go consumption. So I think that we don't have a solution that's going to be like sitting on the shelf for months. Actually, our product has a short shelf life, but it will biodegrade in 4 to 6 weeks. So that's extremely fast cycle. And so we currently, with the level of technology that we have, really focus on things like mass participation events and consumption on the go, from like airports to cafes. So that kind of lifestyle that unfortunately we've become addicted to, where we need a disposable solution, but it's going to work in conjunction with growing the need for and the use of reusable solutions, and also just reducing like useless consumption of all of these products. So I think that if we manage to play on every level and have like a more balanced approach to this, we'll find that some things work really well for some applications, and we should just focus on those ones, and we'll just find the right match for each of the problems.
All right, any last questions before we wrap it up today? Right over here. They have a mic for you.
Oh, I'm
It's
sorry.
coming.
Hi, the question is for Roth. Are you going to expand your vision to other countries or to try to bring this vision that you have for recombining with life again, the nature part? Can you go to other areas other than just Tulum?
Yes, we are focused on that, and we have many propositions in different countries to start working on that. I think it's a process of make a permeable membrana to get out of the cave. So we start really changing technology and make new forms to be more in touch, more integrated with nature, and that's technology is essential for that, of course. But the most important is that we recover our relationship with nature. All the secret, all the answers, everything is lying there. Life.
All right, well, dialogue is definitely the place where new ideas start. So thank you so much for joining us today and to this group of panelists. I appreciate your time and your willingness to go down the line and answer all different kinds of questions about your work. Keep it up. We need you. Thank you so much.